俺の財宝か？欲しけりゃくれてやる。探せ！この世の全てをそこに置いてきた。
Yo guys, and welcome to this new video. So it seems that we are finally entering the core of this new arc involving the League of Villains and the Superpower Liberation Army, with this chapter clearly having the role of establishing the position and the conditions of both sides at the beginning of the fight. But before talking about how this brief contact underlines better what seems to be now the true substantiality of the main protagonists, especially for what concerns Destro and the Liberation Army, let me say that I'm trying my best to publish a new video every day, so make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell to always know when I upload something new. Alright, with that said, let's jump straight into it. So, first things first, we discover a couple of new Gigantomachia quirks. Indeed, after the enhanced resistance, strength and the capability of enlarging his body, we now saw how he is capable of moving fast underground and, very interestingly, also to generate explosions from his hands. An ability which allows his huge body, which in theory should be vulnerable to close-range one-hit KO attacks like those caused by Shigaraki's quirk, to defend himself, maintaining the distance while at the same time attacking. And since it is an ability incredibly similar to Bakugo's one, it could even become an excuse for a confrontation between that beast and Mr. King Explosion Murder if the UA students will indeed be involved in the next events of the plot. In any case, I'm truly appreciating how in the current situation of the League of Villains, Horikoshi is using Gigantomachia not only as an opportunity for them to acquire from the Doctor the support they need and as a way to fix in Shigaraki's mind his goals, but also as a practical way, especially for what concerns the leader himself, to train, to become stronger. Indeed, a non-stop fight against that monster for a month and a half is basically a month and a half non-stop training, and combining the way in which Tomura will become stronger thanks to this and the support the Doctor wants to give him, the famous new power that he mentioned, we will most likely see a first true power-up of the entire league in my opinion, the perfect moment for the plot, because it is perfectly coordinated with everything else that is happening, with Deku's new ability, with their confrontation with the Superpower Liberation Army, with the improvement of the Nomu, and in a situation where the disappearance of both All for One and All Might kinda lowered the level of strength one has to possess in order to be considered among the strongest. Moreover, Shigaraki's state of mind is much more certain of itself than it was before, so he would be much more determined and thus capable of using his power towards his true goal that now he can see more clearly, and this concept is testified by his smile. Indeed, we have to remember that in this manga smiles have a very specific and important role, so each time that we see a character smile, we have to be aware that specific behavior contains probably an important message about that person which the author wants to transmit. And this is why smiles are underlined in very specific situations and always look different from a character to another. For example, even Deku's one is completely different from All Might's, even if the two are related, and they are evidently completely different from Shigaraki's and Toga's, which we can see in this chapter. But what's interesting is that they all smile when they are looking at their goals, at their ambitions, while the difference lays in how the smile contains the true significance one's own ambition has for each character. So, overall, again, this chapter continues the sensation that Horikoshi wants to use this arc to explore and develop the villains' characterizations, and this can be seen, for example, in how he is focusing a little bit more on Spinner, the member of the League we know less about, but who seems to be a very complex character. On the other hand, the role the author wants to give to the Superpower Liberation Army is still pretty much unclear, and this is mainly because of the many inconsistencies they already showed between the ideals they affirm to follow and their actions. Indeed, as I underlined in my video about the perspectives of this new arc, I'll put a link in the description below, for a group affirming to fight to give people back their natural right to exercise their own superpowers, their own quirks, as unique part of their individuality as human beings, not only the leader, who as such represents the entire organization, killed a person just because he expressed dislike towards Destro and his actions, but also the way they kidnapped and tortured Jiran is nothing different from what a gangster or a villain would do, especially considering that the justification for acting this way towards the broker is to acquire the opportunity to personally kill other people to make their cause acquire more support. Indeed, their plan seems to be luring the villains to attack a specific location where they probably already organized a lack of heroes, which is very possible since we already saw it a few chapters before with Bakugo and Todoroki fighting just after they got their license, and so creating a situation where it will look like they were forced to fight back to defend themselves, and where that battle, which in that place would have the possibility to be transmitted all over the country, and probably very fast because of the popularity of the League of Villains, will give the Superpower Liberation Army the opportunity to underline how people should be able to use their quirks at least to protect themselves, since it's a fact that heroes cannot be always around. And this message could become even more effective for the army itself if they would use in the fight the support items the Deviantart company is now producing for heroes, since that company is incredibly famous and popular among ordinary citizens for the way it already supports their quirks in their everyday life. The effectiveness of this plan would lay in the fact that after the villains' defeat, the victorious members of the Liberation Army, which will probably be the leaders, will be unavoidably accused to have used quirks against the law. However, in that context, those leaders who we now know have an immense influence on society, since they are all at the top of very important industries, will use that opportunity to underline how nonsense those accusations are, especially because they saved probably not only themselves, but also many people in that town with actions that in the end consist in nothing more than using their own quirks, which shouldn't be different from using their own arms and legs. And so they will use the fight to create this point of view, which will be incredibly supported by again their immense influence, in this way considerably increasing the people's support to the Liberation Army ideals. However, for how sound this most likely plan seems to be, it still is incredibly risky, because the League of Villains now practically has nothing to lose, since for how things are now they have already practically disappeared from the scene, so they have no true power or influence they could possibly lose. On the other hand, the Superpower Liberation Army spent generations to build that great influence so deeply rooted in the society, and so in the case they will be defeated, which is not so unlikely because they cannot use the numerical advantage in that specific battle, because they cannot expose their soldiers, since that would reveal their organization and consequently lower a lot the efficiency of their plan. It will probably be the leaders who will fight, as I said before, and so in case of their defeat, the entire organization would lose its head, which, being it an underworld widespread organization, would probably cause it to crumble. So for how much advantaged Destro seems in this situation, his spot is actually much frailer than Shigaraki's, making everything uncertain and thus much more interesting, especially because there are other variables that would be involved. For example, the Hero Association and in particular Hawks, who we know is now in that delicate double agent spot. Not to mention that if the Doctor will in the end actively support the League of Villains, at some point Eri could be involved and thus the UA students. So overall, everything seems to be as complex and as interesting as one should expect from an arc focused on the villain's side of the plot and on new different perspectives through which seeing that hero society. And while waiting the next chapter to show us in which direction things will develop, that's all for this video. Thank you very much for watching, don't forget to leave a like and make sure to subscribe. See you next time. Jane.